Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today at the Garden of Sports. I'm your host, Zach Gardner, alongside my brother, Jake Gardner.
Hello, hello.
And today we have a hell of a show lined up. We're going to be breaking down the NHL Fantasy Week 7 action. We have top performers. We have injury news. We have top storylines. We have buy low and sell high trade targets. We have best and worst schedules for next week and some streaming options. And of course, scoop 'em up. So let's do it.
Yeah, man, I could take center here.
Okay.
Top performers, Nazem Kadri, 26.5. So is that a surprise? I feel like
He's been pretty good all
I have
season.
no idea. I haven't seen him. Okay.
But he hasn't made the list, though.
Yeah, I was going to say. Tage Thompson, 25.25 fantasy points. Ryan Johansson, 19.25 fantasy points.
And then we'll move on to left wing. We have Alex Ovechkin, 28.5. And he's made this list every single week this season, so he's just on a tear. And then Brady Cachuck, 19.5. And Leon Draisaitl, 19.
Right wing, Mikko Rantanen, hell yeah, 29.25 fantasy points. Only because he had one big game, though. It was like 17 last night.
Wow.
Yeah, so that just... Otherwise, I don't know if the rest of the week was obviously as good. Tom Wilson, 25.75 fantasy points. Pavel Buchnevich, nice, 23.75 fantasy points. I'm glad I picked him back up, dude. I would have regretted that.
Yeah, he's been doing great. And then on defense, Cale Makar, 37.75. He just went the frick off this week. That's insane.
Yeah, that's a really, really high number.
Vladislav Gavrikov, 25.5. Definitely a bit of a surprise there. And then Rasmus Dahlin, 24.75. And that's also a surprise. So kind of a weird week with some of these players that are doing really well. Not guys that are normally on the list.
Yeah. Goalies, Tristan Jarry, 29.75 fantasy points. Elvis Merzlikins, 23.75 fantasy points. Andre Valesky, 22.75 fantasy points. So Merzlikins, you were talking about since last year. Is he kind of finally here?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, he had this insane breakout rookie year where it seemed like he was getting a shutout like almost every other start. Like he was just insane, and he helped me make the finals and lose that year, so that was great. But then last year was a bit of a down year from what people were expecting, but now it looks like he's back to what he was doing 2 years ago, just being like one of the top goalies. So
okay. Heck yeah.
So surprises of the week. Break into some surprises. So one surprise to me, at least, was not a lot of big names making the top performers this week. There were a few, like normal guys that are on the list, but a lot of lower owned guys kind of making this top performer list this week. So it was just a good week all around for some of the guys that don't normally. Just kind of some of the big stars just kind of had off weeks, and that happens. Just one of those weeks. And then also not a ton of injuries this week. That's a good thing, but it's I'm just kind of joking, but there have been tons of injuries every week so far this season, so it was nice to have a normal week where not much really happened injury related. So that's good to see. Those were kind of my surprises. So now we'll break into some injury news. I'll just kind of run through these. Not as much as there's normally been.
So no surprise players?
No, I mean, yeah, the surprises.
We'll go over them, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Like Tage Thompson is kind of a surprise. Young guy on Buffalo. Ryan Johansson having a kind of a breakout year where he's been kind of in a 3-year slump.
Mm-hmm.
Brady Cachuck is finally starting to perform like I thought he could at the beginning of the year. I thought he'd be one of the best fantasy hockey players this season, and it
Okay.
hasn't happened so far, but it looks like he's starting to crack the list. Definitely Tom Wilson is a surprise because he's not normally like a scoring guy. He's more of one of those guys that gets a lot of hits, one of those banger guys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Probably the biggest surprise of the week is Vladislav Gavrikov scoring 25 fantasy points. I mean, this guy, he's not a scoring defenseman. He's your typical stay-at-home defensive guy, not usually getting a lot of offense. So
Mm-hmm.
he's probably the biggest surprise of the week for me. So,
Okay. For sure.
um, and then so now we'll break into injury news. I'm going to start it off with some good news because who doesn't like good news, right, Jake?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we got Nathan McKinnon. He's been on IR for a couple weeks now. He's going to return on Wednesday and play the game Wednesday night. So that's kind of huge news. That's because he's a keeper first round pick in like every league.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's nice.
Alexander Barkov, we said last week that he had that knee injury and he's going to miss a few weeks or more, but he was officially placed on IR on Saturday. So that's just
Okay.
kind of just like a technical thing. Um, Nothing really changed as far as his timeline, but they officially put him on IR. So, and
Okay.
then this one sucks. Braden Point, he's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. So Tampa Bay,
Jeez.
Tampa
Yeah,
Bay, they're dropping like flies over there,
they really are.
and they'll still repeat. Um,
No, I don't know. That's
no,
really
probably
hard.
not. They're too.
Has that ever
It's
been done in hockey?
a three-peat.
Yeah.
Not since the '80s.
I was gonna say I thought it was a lot harder in hockey because of
Yeah, I think the last
it's
team
just
to
like
do it.
it's like football. It's just a lot more moving part, like a lot more starting players, more moving parts.
Yeah, there hasn't been a team to three-peat since the NHL put the salary cap in.
Okay.
The
Yeah, that would
last
just make
team,
sense because I mean the three rotations is just like and like retaining all those players and then everybody keeping the same success from the previous year and
yeah,
it's just a
yeah.
complex sport to be able to
I,
do that.
I think the last team to do it was the 86 7 8 or maybe 87 8 88 89 Oilers with Wayne Gretzky. I think that was the
Okay,
last team to
that makes
three-peat.
sense.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Um, Then we got Drake Batherson. He's been in COVID protocol. He's actually been the leading scorer on Ottawa so far this season before he actually got COVID and was like symptomatic and everything. So he's missed like 2 weeks now. But he's going to return to the Senators on or before December 1st. So he's like with the team right now, but they just haven't. They were talking about putting him in the game last night, but he didn't start. So they're they're thinking he'll be playing by December 1st.
Okay.
And then David Perrone, he just went day to day with an upper body injury. He missed last night's game. Um, Mark Giordano is in COVID protocol. And then Nicholas Backstrom, he's skating with the team, but he's in a non-contact jersey, so he's practicing, but he's not doing full practice yet. So he maybe is a couple weeks away from returning, but it's good to see him skating.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then Drew Dowdy will be back by Tuesday this week. He's been out with a knee injury, so looks like he's a little bit ahead of schedule from what they were saying. So that's really good. He was playing great.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brian Rust, he's out with a lower body injury. And then Brock Nelson, he's gonna miss 2 to 3 weeks with a lower body injury. Ryan Pulak on long-term IR with lower body injury. And then
Jeez.
Anders Lee, he's still in COVID protocol. And then Mike Hoffman, he's going to miss at least another week with an upper body injury. Anthony Duclair, I do declare, he's day to day with a lower body injury. And then this is some good news. Jack Hughes, shoulder, they said that he's about 5 weeks away from practicing just last week or from joining the team. but he was a full participant in Saturday's practice, so I'm thinking that means he's ahead of schedule. That doesn't seem like he's 5 weeks away from returning. I don't know. Like, he's taken contact in practice, but who knows? But I think that's a good sign that he's ahead of schedule.
Heck yeah.
And then Kevin Hayes, he's week to week after re-injuring the same injury he needed surgery for in the offseason, so that doesn't sound good at all. Glad I wasted a waiver move on that guy.
Oh, you used a
Uh,
waiver? I thought you just
no, I
grabbed him.
didn't. I just grabbed
I was
him.
gonna say, okay.
But and then Eric Shernak, he's been out all last week with a lower body injury. He may be back for Sunday's game, so that's good to see. He's a maybe worth a good pickup in a banger league. He gets a ton of hits and stuff. He's a very physical player, so that's
Look at
kind of
that.
good news for anybody that might own him. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's all the injuries. Still quite a bit of injuries, but
Yeah,
the
you were
list
just talking about like there's no
the
injuries and he has this
the
long
list
ass list.
the list is normally like a full page, though. This is like, half page. So I
Yeah,
think that's a
hockey's been
small.
bad this year.
It's
Hockey's been
been
bad.
really bad. Like
Yeah.
when I'm typing out the layouts of our episodes, I spend like 20 minutes on the injury stuff.
Yeah, because it's hard to find every injured player because they're not all listed as out. There's some of them
Right.
are day to day, and yeah, we're just trying to give everybody all the up to date news. So
We got all the little nuggets for you over here at the Garden
yeah,
of Sports.
like
But now we'll move on to top storylines. I just got one main storyline I kind of want to talk about that is
yeah,
fantasy relevant. Because I was gonna put one on here like, can the Edmonton Oilers win the Stanley Cup? But I mean that's not really like a fantasy topic, so I didn't really feel like going there.
yeah.
But clearly they can, but we don't have to spend 10 minutes on that.
What
But
about the Ducks? Can the Ducks win the Stanley Cup?
I don't know. The Ducks are a little lame.
Oh my god.
but, but anyways,
So is
so
that
my
a
main
no? So
I don't know. I mean, if they're still playing in like 2 months, like they've been to start the season, I think
yeah,
they
yeah.
would
We'll
be
have to see
considered
more
contenders.
for
They're
sure.
so young, but they have that combination of young talent and older players that we saw with like the Blackhawks in like 2010, you know? So
Yeah,
like
I do
I'm
remember
not
that.
saying
Yeah.
it's impossible, but it's not
God,
likely.
who was that forward dude that I can't? The ginger that we loved, but he was like old. But he was like an all star.
The
He played.
ginger,
Maybe he
uh,
wasn't fully ginger, but he retired. Remember, he like sat out a year so we could have some cap room or something. And
oh,
he was
Marian
beloved.
Hossa.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Marian Hossa. He actually just went into the Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, dude, I just haven't heard him in a. I just couldn't. I'd forgotten about him for a while, so that just came to mind.
Well,
But
he has been out of the league for 3 years now. But
yeah, it feels like even longer. Jeez.
yeah, it does. But yeah, he's a great player. But for the
Yeah, it was
Blackhawks,
him and well, were the defensemen that old at that point? Because we did give them big contracts. They were just
they weren't old.
yeah. I was gonna say
One of the older players on that team was Hossa.
yeah.
And then they had some other like role player guys that were older. But the main thing was Taves and Kane just broke out that
Who
season,
was
and it
that?
was
Bufflin. Remember him? Was he old at that point?
Bufflin. He was like in his prime. I think he was like 27, maybe
Okay. Okay.
26.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway,
But
sorry.
anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
My main storyline: New York Islanders. They're getting 2 games postponed this week because of a COVID outbreak. So this is like the second team in 2 weeks that is having games postponed because of COVID. So we
Yep.
saw that with Ottawa last week, and they're back to playing now. But is this something to be concerned? Because we were kind of chalking the Ottawa one up to stricter Canadian
Um.
rules, but this is in America now that's getting games postponed. So
Yeah, it is something to be concerned about because the New York governor is talking about new restrictions based on this new variant that's been found in South Africa. and there's no cases in USA yet, but there's going to be stricter, I think, at least travel restrictions going on. And I don't know, we'll see, bro. But with that happening, with a new variant and governments being all concerned before the holidays, I mean, you could definitely see Canada even more shut down than us, and then certain states could be, I don't know, it could definitely affect the NHL. You know what I mean?
It just seems that it's the NHL these type of things are affecting the most, and that's just something you got to take note of, and you got to that's why it's always a good idea in fantasy not to have a ton of players from the same team. But so maybe try and limit on your roster to only having like 2 or 3 guys from one team, so that something like this doesn't just completely lose you a week.
Well, it's just like bigger than our sports. We just have to hope that.
Well, I'm talking for fantasy purposes. But,
it's just like if a variant in COVID starts just spreading in general a lot more, there's nothing in fantasy we can do at all. It would just shut down, sadly. So I think, they're just being precautionary with all these teams, and maybe the NHL didn't require the vaccine like the NBA did or something, and that's why it's like they're leaving it optional for players. But that would explain more shutdowns like this. Because in the NBA, it's only been like players are out for 10 days or whatever, but they haven't shut down a team at all because like 90% of the NBA is vaccinated. So it's weird that in the NHL, it's like the whole teams are being shut down, where as in the NBA, it's like one player's out 10 days or whatever in the COVID-19 protocols. And then, and I was just comparing, I don't know if NHL required the vaccination like the NBA did. The NBA was like, well, not every state did, not every team, based on law, but 90% of the NBA is vaccinated, 90% plus. So,
okay.
I don't know. The only theory that's like I guess it's a conspiracy, but like, it's not a conspiracy, but the NHL didn't require it maybe, and because of that, whole teams have to shut down if somebody does get it, because
the problem that hockey's ran into,
if you don't have
the problem that hockey's actually ran into is multiple players, like 9 players on Ottawa were in COVID protocol. They can't put a team out there. Like they're having full team outbreaks. It's not like
so if is spreading easier is just without the vaccination, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's just something you got to keep monitoring. But it's just 2 teams in 2 weeks having games postponed. That's just we got to keep monitoring that situation. Hopefully, it gets in control.
For sure. All right. Well, yeah.
And then we'll move on now. I got some buy low trade targets.
For sure.
So I just got a little list of guys here that what I think would be good players. Some of them are having really slow starts, but I feel like they're worth trying to get on your team before they start, getting on a hot streak, and then owners that have stuck with them. There's no chance you're going to be able to make a trade because now they're finally doing something, So we'll start it off with Jason Robertson. He had a slow start, like for the first 2 weeks, but he's actually the last 3 weeks has been playing very well, and he could be doing even better. He's a great young player, but he's not anybody's top 5 player on a roster, so he may be a good player that you could get a trade done with. Even though he's been doing good, he's not anybody's best player on a team, you know what I'm saying?
For sure.
So that might be a good player. He's a young second-year player on Dallas, and Dallas is a pretty good team, and he's a very talented young guy. So I feel like he has a lot more points coming, and he could be a very good top 50 player by the end of the season.
Okay.
And then next we have Brock Besser, just having a terrible season so far. Just absolute dog crap. Like he does not look like how he's looked his whole career. I've owned Brock Besser. I think this is like his fourth or fifth year, and I've had him like three or four of his seasons, and he's always been a very good player on my team. And so I always like having Brock Besser because he always gives you good numbers, and you can always get him in like the mid rounds. And I just love
Mm-hmm.
picking him up in like the seventh round because he's always, just very solid. You know what you expect from him. He'll get you like 25 goals and like 20 assists, and he has upside to do even better than that. Like he has like 30, he has like 75 point upside. So he's just a very talented guy, but this is by far the worst season he's ever had so far. So anybody that has him is very frustrated with him
Mm-hmm.
because he's been so good his career that everybody's so hesitant to just drop him. So I feel like this is definitely a guy that if you feel like he can turn it around, which the odds are in his favor that he will turn it around from being this bad, you
Mm-hmm.
could probably I guarantee you could get a trade done for Brock Besser and somebody will gladly give you him at this
Okay.
point. And it's just if you want to take the risk from that point on,
Mm-hmm.
because
I
this
feel
could
like you
just be
do.
a career low season. I feel like this is like one of the easiest buy lows on this whole list. Um,
Okay.
because there's definitely a lot of frustrated owners with him, but they're still hanging on to him because of how good he's been every year. So he's just it's one of those things that just sucks. But
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of like how Johnny Gaudreau was a couple years ago, where he had that really terrible season. That's what it's looking like for Brock Besser this year.
Yeah, freaking Johnny Hockey. Yeah, I feel like
um,
with NHL though, it'll stick more. Like that's the perfect example with Johnny Hockey. It's just like it
because
becomes a whole season thing.
there's not a lot of players in the NHL that can be a superstar every year, like put up
Mm-hmm.
superstar numbers every single year, whether the team is great or bad. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of players put up superstar numbers. Vast majority of players put up superstar numbers when the team does really well, uh, at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of guys like Connor McDavid that even if the Oilers are crap, he'll still give you 100 points, you know?
Yeah.
Um, that's just how the NHL is. It's a lot more of a team oriented game, so a lot of guys do better if the team does better. So, it's not a surprise that Vancouver is just playing terribly as a team and Brock Besser's struggling along with them. That's just kind of how it goes. He's a talented player, and I feel like Vancouver is a talented team too. So I feel like the team can start putting some pucks in the net, and then he'll start doing better as a result of that. You know, it's going to
For
be like
sure.
a trickle down effect once the team
Mm-hmm.
starts playing a little better. Get gets their heads out of their keisters, eh?
Yeah. We'll see.
So now we'll move on to Mark Scheifele. Similar to Brock Besser, this guy will be a little harder to get though because this guy's like a superstar Hall of Fame level player. He's been in the league a long time. He's a superstar, Mark Scheifele. He's having a very slow start, but this is a player who could and should turn it around soon. And Winnipeg's a great team, so I just feel like Mark Scheifele, he just had a rough start with like dealing with some injuries and stuff and just couldn't get going. I feel like he's going to find his groove and he's going to because this guy's like 80 point. This guy's like an 80 90 point guy every single year.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy's a guy averaging in the mid fours every single season, and he's averaging 2.1 right now in our league.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a guy you should trade for that can give you. He can be a top 50 player by the end of the season. So I just feel like he's got that potential. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
very on the same team, you could lump another guy in here with Scheifele, Blake Wheeler. The two of them kind of are hand in hand. They're both like superstar level players. Maybe Scheifele a little more than Wheeler, but Wheeler almost at the same level, like having a very slow start too. I feel like he's going to turn it around as well. So you could try and get a buy low trade for Scheifele or Blake Wheeler at this point, and both of those guys are going to turn it around at some point.
Okay, I bet.
Now moving on, Travis Kneckney. Um, he's
Hmm.
in a slump. He's in a slump right now, but he's an exciting young player who has a tendency to put the biscuit in the basket, and I feel like he can easily turn it around. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's just if you're usually looking for those younger guys because usually you feel better about them turning around a slow start
Yeah.
because that they're usually more playing for contracts and stuff. So, and this guy's just he's everybody talks so highly of him. He's just one of those young, all around good players that you want on your team. So I feel like he's got a lot of points in his future. So this is a guy you could definitely be trying to get a deal done for. Now we'll move on to a center,
Huh?
Ryan O'Reilly. He's in a slump, but the Blues are a very talented team, and he's a very talented player. One of the top centers in the league, all around, plays defense, gets you hits and blocks, everything, and he can turn it around anytime and be a good player. So that this could be a nice trade that you could actually get done. Somebody's probably really frustrated with Ryan O'Reilly and would be willing to
Okay.
give him up. And then my next guy, Toivo Teravainen. He's not in a slump per se. He's having a good fine year, but he's not putting up like a ton of points. He's on a great offense and he's on a good power play and he's a really good passer. So I definitely feel like he's gonna perform better than he's even performing right now. Right now he's just kind of like middle of the road level play, averaging like a
Mm-hmm.
nice 3, which is fine. But like I feel like you could trade for him and hope that he can get up into the to like the mid to high threes, low fours at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he has the potential to do that because he's on that great power play and he's a really good passer. So,
All right,
um,
for sure.
when moving on, this is my only defenseman on this list, Shea Theodore. Similar to Teravainen, he's not in a slump, but he's not putting up crazy numbers. But he'll turn it around. He's been dealing with some injuries and stuff on Vegas. I feel like now is a time to put a trade in to get him before his average starts shooting way up. And then
Okay.
you can get yourself potentially a top 10 D man by the end of the season.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like he's definitely worth it.
yeah, that would be a guy for sure. That it would probably be a little harder to get that trade done because he's not. It's not like he's performing so terribly. You have to put a good offer in for him, but it would still be considered a buy low because normally people wouldn't even consider trading Theodore.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then my last guy on here, Mitchell Marner. He is clearly a fantastic young player, but the points are not coming in bunches just yet, like they normally do with him. He's normally a guy averaging close to 5. This guy's like a superstar, but it hasn't been going that way for him so far this season. But I can tell you that it will, and so just get this guy, and get this guy.
Mitchell Marner. All right.
Yeah, definitely be putting the trade in for him this week because
How
by
much would
next
you have to
week.
offer though?
Um, so Mitchell Marner, I had an example down in the buy lows or in the sell highs. Like I was thinking maybe you could send over an offer with like Matt Duchene, who's just going the hell off so far this year. You could maybe do a 2-for-1,
Yeah.
include
Nashville, dude.
Duchene,
We were just there.
try and try and grab Marner. But yeah, it would be something like that. You'd have to offer like a good 2-for-1 still.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd be locking in like normally like a keeper level guy on
For
your team.
sure.
So now we'll transition over to some sell highs. Got about 5 of these for you. So first on my list here, Pierre-Luc Dubois. He is having a bounce back year, so that's good to see. And he could very well keep it up. I still like Pierre-Luc Dubois, but he has a history of having a lot of big slumps. So now is a good chance to trade for consistency. Maybe try and trade for a young Kirill Kaprizov on Minnesota Wild, who looks like he's like an up and coming superstar level guy. maybe something like that you could get done because they're averaging about the same, and Kaprizov just is scoring more points. Pierre-Luc Dubois kind of, he gets hits and blocks and everything, so that's good. But he goes on long droughts, and he has a history of that. And then when he scores in bunches. So it's just he can be a frustrating player to have on a team just because you know it could be that he's in a slump when you're like in a playoff matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my next guy on my list, Ryan Getzlaff. His numbers are starting to go down. He could be on the waiver wire by late next week. So now is your chance to dump him to some poor soul and try and get somebody that will stay up at that average that he's at. So maybe you could
Mm-hmm.
trade Getzlaff for like an Alex DeBrincat right now or something like that. But I mean, I'd rather try and trade him right now than be just dropping him next week.
Yeah, for sure.
Next guy, Timo Meyer. He has been fantastic, but you have to think he's going to slow down at some point. Uh, Trade him for a top level performer, like maybe trade him for a Nazem Kadri, who is similar to Meyer, having a fantastic season that you think is going to slow down a little bit. But I think if it's Nazem Kadri versus Timo Meyer, I think Kadri is going to sustain more of his crazy numbers versus Meyer. Like I just feel like their numbers are both gonna fall, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Meyer's are gonna fall a lot more. So right now is the time to trade Meyer for Kadri. Do a one that is worth a 1-for-1, and I think that could get done. And I
Okay.
think Kadri is going to be the more consistent guy for the whole season. So I think that's a trade you could definitely make.
All right.
And then my next one, we talked about him a little bit trading for Mitchell Marner, Matt Duchene.
Yeah.
He's having a great year, but I think you can trade upwards with how good he is doing right now. Maybe you can get yourself some more consistent guys like Kirill Kaprizov or maybe a Patrick Kane, or like we were talking about, do like a 2-for-1 or even a 3-to-1 and try and get Mitchell Marner. That would be an insane trade, but that could get done.
All right. Yeah, I
And
feel
if
like.
if if you look for the whole season, except for like the first two games, Matt Duchene has almost scored in every single game they've played. So it's just you can definitely show a list of consistency with him to try and convince a Mitchell Marner owner that it's a worth it deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly on the list, Andrew Copp. This is more of a sell mid tier. He's having a nice year, but I have doubts if he can keep it up because he's normally like a third line guy, but he's getting more ice time because they had some injuries and stuff, and he's putting up great numbers.
Okay.
Um, I would try and trade for a more consistent scorer, like guy that's averaging similarly, like maybe an Alex DeBrincat. Do Andrew Copp and somebody else and trade for Alex DeBrincat. That could get you very consistent goal scoring that I feel like it is going to be more sustainable than Andrew Copp.
Okay.
So, if you have anything to add, any other players that you were thinking about for sell high or buy low, Jake?
Uh, no, I was not. I'm gonna look at kind of your options here in our league and
Okay.
base it off of that. I feel like you have a pretty heavy list here, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, these were all the guys I wanted to talk about all week, and I spent a lot of time putting actual trade scenarios in that I think would actually work. So, I'm hoping that my examples can actually get you some of these guys or relieve you of some of these guys, depending on which way you go.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love it.
So now we'll move on to best and worst schedules. This next week is kind of just like a ho hum week. Not a lot of craziness going on. There's only 4 teams. Like everybody basically has a 3-game schedule. So it's just kind of like a week where everybody's got the same thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 4 teams that have a 4-game schedule. We got the Columbus Blue Jackets, Tampa Bay Lightning, Calgary Flames, and San Jose Sharks. They have 4 games.
Okay.
The only problem with that, I mean, that they do have that makes them the best schedules. The problem with that is booty cheek backup goalies on those teams. So not real streaming options that I would actually suggest, even though they have 4 games. I don't like any of these backup goalies, so I would kind of just stay away from doing the backup goalie streamer strat this week. Um,
Okay.
as far as the streamers go, I have some guys that in the scoop 'em up segment that I think can be streamer options.
Okay.
So and then the best another this is a team that has a 3-game schedule, but they have a Friday Saturday back to back with Detroit and Chicago. So 2 teams that are just kind of okay. Detroit's kind of fallen off a little bit the last week or two. They're still a decent team, but I think the Islanders are clearly better than Detroit and Chicago. So I would be picking up Semyon Varlamov for a start against either of those teams, whichever one he would get.
Okay.
I think he could get you a win on one of those days. So that would be the only goalie thing that actually really like this week. Other than
If
that,
they
there's not a
play,
lot of
basically.
not a lot of great back-to-back schedules this week as far as backup goalies are concerned.
Okay.
Um, and then the worst schedules, there's 2 teams that have 2 games this week, Philly and Dallas. So,
Okay.
so that probably would be an even better time. Now's an even better chance to trade for Jason Robertson because his owner will just be like, okay, I'm trading away a guy that only has 2 games this week, and then that's a very uh, you're not really playing the long game with that. You'd just be looking for 1 week. So that might not be the best way to go about trading a guy like Jason Robertson, but
Okay.
you might have a little bit better of a chance to get him this week too, because the owner will be like, well, he only has 2 games this week.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's the best and worst schedules. And lastly, we'll move on now to scoop 'em up.
Scoops.
So my top scoop this week, you need to go get this guy. Jake Ottinger, the goalie on the Dallas Stars. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's been getting almost all the starts for the last week, and he's been putting up fantastic numbers. This is just a guy you need to go get because eventually he's gonna get scooped up. This is the week to go grab him. Make sure you can just lock him in, and I feel like this can be a top 10 goalie by the end of the season. He's putting up great numbers.
I hope so. I hope he becomes top 5.
And then Rob Thomas. Um, Unlike the song, he has not been feeling
Uh,
unwell lately. He has actually been feeling very well, scoring a ton of points and getting a ton of ice time. And he's just racking up assists, racking up ice time. And St. Louis is a very deep team. I really like this Rob Thomas a lot. He's only 11% owned, approaching 12% owned. That's honestly a crime because he's one of the higher scoring guys. He's the highest scoring guy on the team, I'm pretty sure at this point. He just doesn't get multi point games. He'll get you 1 assist and he'll get you a goal, he'll get you 1 assist. That's why his average isn't higher. And I don't think he gets a ton of power play points, but I think there could be more power play points in his future. This is just a guy you want to get before he becomes, he could easily shoot up to 80% owned within the next couple of weeks. This guy needs to be rostered.
Thomas? Okay.
Yeah.
Was he already owned in ours? I feel like
I picked him up
I didn't even.
yesterday.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
And then this next guy, he was on the list last week, but he's going to make the list again because he's still low owned. Trevor Zegras. He's seeming to be consistent. This is 2 weeks now where he's been consistently scoring. I feel like he should be owned, and this is a guy you can grab, similar to Rob Thomas or Ottinger. I feel like these are guys that you can grab that could be season long holds. So, this is your chance to go do it. I'm sure there's somebody on your team that you can drop to get one of these 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the main three. I would definitely be trying to get these three guys. And then these next guys, all these guys I'm going to be talking about next, these are more kind of streaming options or just kind of ride while they're hot type guys. I don't think these have a lot of potential to be season long holds. So just kind of
Okay.
just kind of look for these guys if you can't get one of these first three guys I mentioned, Ottinger, Thomas, or Zegras. You can look for these guys to get you some points, and you know, they could fall off a cliff anytime and you'll be dropping them. But right now, these guys are on hot streaks. So Sonny Milano, he's a good young goal scorer, young center on Anaheim. Just another one of these young guys for Anaheim that's doing well. It's just seemingly every prospect that comes up just does good right off the bat. Um, but he
Mm-hmm.
had a really nice week, so I mean he could be a guy you could look at. Anaheim has a decent schedule this week, so there could be more points for him. And then we mentioned him; he's one of the top performing D-men this week, Vladislav Gavrikov. He's 7% owned, and that's usually about where he's at because he's purely a defensive guy. But he went on a scoring tear this week. It's just pick him up and ride him while he's hot. I feel like he's going to be a drop at some point, but he's getting points right now. So I feel like pick him up, get the points.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'll fall off a cliff and he won't score any points for like 3 weeks. So, so get the points while you can. And then next, Tage Thompson, 10% owned. He made our top performers list this week. Had a very nice week scoring goals. Just ride him while he's hot. And this is definitely a guy that I think is kind of unsustainable because if you look, when he scores, he only scores multiple goal games. So he'll score 2 goals, then he'll go like 2, 3 games, not get any points, and then he'll have another 2 goal game. And guys like that, very unsustainable. But while he's on a hot streak, you pick that up, but that could fall off a cliff very easily.
Okay.
And then next, Zach Cassian. He started scoring again this week. I feel like he's worth a stream because Edmonton's just a very good team. And, you know, if he's playing on the second line with Draisaitl, I mean, why not? If he's playing that for next week, just why not start him and see if you can get some points and the trickle down from being on that line.
Mm-hmm.
And then very similar way to about Zach Kassian playing with Draisaitl, we got Michael Bunting, who's playing with Austin Matthews right now on Toronto. He's only 5% owned, but like I mentioned, he's on a line with Austin Matthews. If that sticks, this guy should get picked up, but he still gets fluctuating ice time. So he's on the line with Austin Matthews 5-on-5, but he's not on a power play, so that's why his ice time isn't really that high. But he is racking up points right now, just getting assists passing over to Austin Matthews. So they have a little chemistry going. I feel like he's worth at least a week-long stream while that's going on.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And then lastly, to wrap it up here, Victor Arvidsson, he's only 7% owned. I feel like that's a little too low because he is actually historically a kind of a decent scoring forward. But he scored a bunch this week. This is definitely a very good points league move. He doesn't offer you much else. But definitely this could be like a nice little week-long, 2 week-long stream here while he's getting some good points going.
Sure. Yeah, and I just have some questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
You got rid of my question section, but that's all right. So,
No, I figured you'd just chime in, you know.
um, are you holding Ilya Sorokin?
I am still holding Ilya Sorokin.
Mm-hmm.
I
He's only started 4 games for me in the past like 3 weeks.
Really,
And
I
then
didn't realize he was not playing that many.
I don't know
Huh.
what happened, but like I guess he had 2 bad games there, and then the last 2 they were pretty good games.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know, but he has had a lot of goals against in those past 4 over the past 3.5 weeks. So
Okay.
I don't know. I was holding them, but
I feel like he's at least for another week or two worth a hold. I mean, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be picked up right away if you drop him. I feel like somebody's going to pick him
Mm-hmm.
up right away. It's just how concerned you are. If you're that concerned, maybe you do try to drop him because he
No, I mean
hasn't
I
been
have
getting starts. But
I grabbed those two other goalies, so now I can get the starts covered. It's just
right,
yeah, he's not. He was a top 5, top 3 goalie for a bit there, and now he's 15th because they're not giving him starts. But also the
still
Islanders are
feel
now going through all
I
that shit.
still
So
yeah, like you said, you figured out a way around it to still hold him. I feel like that's what you should try and do first is to try and see if you can pick some goalies up to cover starts while he's not
mm,
getting a ton, but I feel like he's too talented to just be on the waiver wire, you know what
yeah,
I'm
he'll come
saying?
back. Yeah, and then a
I feel
couple.
so.
Another. You said earlier. I didn't say a buy low, but Sean Couturier on Philadelphia. Just like I don't know if it's the whole team. Is Philadelphia just doing bad in general?
They are kind of struggling as a team,
Okay,
yeah.
because you said Travis. Travis was on your buy lows. So
Yeah.
he's doing pretty dang bad. Sean Couturier is also doing pretty bad. He was like a 4.5 average, and now he's down to 3.1.
Yeah,
So
that's
he's
going to bounce
he's really
back. That could
he's really hit a
that could
cliff.
yeah, that's a nice buy low for sure. Glad you
Okay.
brought him up because I was looking at him to add to the buy low list, but it was
hmm
already kind of lengthy, so I
And
was
then
hoping that you would bring him up.
sell high. Devin Taves, Colorado defenseman. Since coming back, he's just been going off. He's
That's a
averaging
sell high.
okay because he's a 5.1 average right now,
Yeah, that's insane.
but he's getting like 24 minutes a night. So like,
Yeah,
is it
and
a
I feel
sell
like
high or is it not?
I don't know. I feel like shoot for the moon with him and try and get something that you think will last a little longer.
Like Shea
And
Theodore?
yeah, try and trade him for like Shea Theodore, and then if you can't do that, then just hold on to him and just enjoy the ride with that. But that's going to be a roller coaster for sure.
For sure. All right, man. Well, that's it for me.
Much everybody for listening. I hope that we were able to give you some good advice here for this week. Don't forget to follow us on all our social medias. We got Facebook. We got facebook.com/Garden of Sports Podcast. We got Instagram, instagram.com/Garden of Sports. We got Twitter, twitter.com/GOSPod2021. And we are currently working on finishing up our website. I know we've been talking about that for a few weeks, but it's going to be done here soon, and we can't wait for you guys to see it. But
Yes,
just go
sir.
check us out on all our social media. We post fun stuff on there every day, and we're trying to build a nice little community, so we want y'all to be a part of it. And just thank you so much for the support, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.